All right, my guest today, Andy Mckay. He's the Director of Player Development for the Seattle Mariners. He was previously with the Colorado Rockies as a performance coordinator. You were a college coach at Sacramento City College. You coached with Team USA. The Mariners have pretty much hired you to better their mental training, and that's something that I brought you on the show to talk about and just kind of touch base on. You were with the Rockies previously before the Mariners picked you up. What were some of the things that stood out with you, and some of the things that you worked with those guys as far as the mental side of the game?
Okay, well, yeah, when I was with the Rockies, I was the peak performance coordinator, which it's the mental skills coach, however you want to frame it. It was working with the players individually on the mental aspects of the game, but really, right away, what you're trying to do is identify with each player how their mind and their body really need to work together and connect together because I think that's probably the still biggest issue in developing talent right now is that we generally try to split it into two different things, and it's not two different things. The mind and the body are connected. Where the mental part of the game ends and the physical game begins, I don't think anybody can really define. And so, working on either aspect, independent of each other, for me is probably not beneficial to the athlete. So, you really begin by trying to educate that both pieces have to work together.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And part of the disconnect I feel with even from college to the pros is that you know players don't understand how the mind works and how to control emotions and kind of keep themselves playing a good game every day. So talk about your belief that maybe 10% of the prospects have the physical skills that separate them from the group. This is something that I've read that you've talked about, and 90%
Mm-hmm.
the rest of players need to really master the mental game to succeed at the major league level. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I think like we'll start with like pitchers, for example. If you go to a traditional spring training complex and you have a bullpen with say 8 bullpen mounds, so you can see 8 players throwing at the same time, and I could easily line up, a player from the lowest level to a player in the big leagues and everything in between, and most people would not be able to pick out the big leaguer in that bullpen session, with the exceptions of those elite Felix Hernandez, Clayton Kershaw, Chris Sale type of performers. The rest of them blend together very, very quickly, and whether the number is 10% or 5% or example. I don't know what that number is, but I know it's very low.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of players blend together physically fairly quickly. And I spent some time with an NBA team, and as just an observer, and they made the comment that to win in the NBA you need superstars. And when I asked the question of how many superstars are there, the number was very, very small. I want to say maybe 15 or something in that ballpark. So um, there are not many of those players that just purely separate themselves on physical ability. Um, and so it really does become the separator of how you apply your mind to it.
So talk about your work with hitters and how you kind of conquer their mind and how you teach them to conquer the mental game. Is there any
Yeah.
specific things that you bring to the table every day that you're gonna especially bring to spring training with the Mariners this year?
Well, it starts with anything you're trying to get anybody to do, not just an athlete, but uh, you have to start with kind of motivation and how am I going to get this player to buy into this? And the only way you can motivate somebody is to educate them as to how this piece of the puzzle impacts the end result that they're looking for. So, with a hitter, for example, whether it's hard contact, whether it's a batting average, whether it's a contract, whether it's playing time, whether it's where they're hitting in the lineup, whatever's motivating that player, you then have to take that and backtrack it to, okay, here's how this will help you get that. And when you do the practice and you've put in the time and you're prepared and you have a game plan that revolves around your strengths and that player, that pitcher you happen to be facing that night, once you do that, it's done and you've got what you've got. Now the trick is getting in the batter's box and sticking to it and not getting in your own way. And so you have to really do a lot of educating as to, showing the players. And the concept that I've always used is, that element of that 15-second clock between pitches. And that the clock starts at 15. When that clock hits 0 and that pitcher is about to wind up, where do you want your focus? And how do you get it there every pitch? And so on a typical night, a hitter is going to see 16 pitches. The goal would be, how many of those 16 pitches can I get you where you need to be, or can you get yourself where you need to be when that clock hits 0 and you're about to go from thinking to reacting? What is that last conscious thought? What is your intent in the batter's box that you want driving up until that last moment? So, and it's going to be different for every hitter.
Right.
But you start with that acknowledgement of the game is played in 15-second intervals. We have to control the 15 seconds. So I'll give you the most generic example. A left-handed hitter facing a right-handed pitcher. And this hitter, his approach is to get a ball over the middle of the plate and drive the ball in the air over the center fielder's head. That's his intent. Okay, that's his vision. Okay? And he walks into the batter's box and he's committed to doing that. First pitch is a cutter that runs in on his hands. Okay? As soon as that happens, the mind is going to register, okay, that what I want to do may not be possible versus what I just saw. And so now the wheel starts spinning in the head, and as that clock works down to 0, that next pitch is being thrown, and all of the work and preparation that you've put in is now out the window because you're not really committed to anything at this point. And that's a really generic example, but it plays out every single day. And when I've coached at really every level of the game, this part of the game is the exact same. The mental issues that high school hitters have, that junior college hitters have, that Division I hitters have, and Major League hitters have, they're the exact same. There is no, it doesn't change, physically it does change, but mentally they're fighting the exact same battle.
That's outstanding. So talk to us, that's probably one of the things that you're most passionate about. Talk to us about, how you're going to change the culture with the player development. And what's one of the things that you're most excited about incorporating on a daily basis besides, what you just kind of explained?
Well, and this is the beginning of my 3rd year here, so a lot of this has already taken place. But, I've hired 3 really good mental skills coaches. But one of the things that's unique to our program is that these individuals have also all played the game at a high level and have also coached the game at a high level. And so we're really coaching mental skills through the lens of in-uniform coaches that just also happen to have this skill set. Mm-hmm. And so they work throughout our system. And many of the things that we've tried to put in place are ingrained fairly well. The Mariners players know my background, and they know the amount of importance that we place in this. So our mental skills program is not really off in another room in the clubhouse, go talk to this guy type of program. It's in the batting cage, it's on the field, it's in the dugout, and we've normalized it as much as humanly possible. So, when you think about it, if you're in any locker room or clubhouse, if a player says, hey, my hamstring is a little tender, there's no stigma around going to get treatment and getting your leg taped and wrapped and doing what you have to do to get out and play. One of my goals is to remove the stigma of sitting there and saying, hey, the game is moving really fast for me right now, and I'm having a tough time repeating my approach pitch to pitch.
Right.
And because everyone's fighting the same battle. And so I wanted to remove that stigma and normalize those conversations, which in many ways I think we have. And so that's been exciting for me.
Nice. As far as the mental game goes, because when I do lessons and work with teams and stuff, that's something that we talk about all the time is the intent of the batter. And how early do you feel it's necessary to incorporate some of these life skills, as you say, or some of these skills to perform at the high level? When do you start kind of really pushing this as far as being as important as the mechanics?
I would say instantly. I don't think there's a level that's too young, and because again, the mechanics are totally driven by the intent. The intent is driven by the commitment, and so when you evaluate the mechanical swing, you don't know what you're evaluating until you know what the intent behind it was.
Right.
And so, again, for example, if a player's in the batter's box and he's worried about swinging, and if in his mind he's thinking, "I've got to lay off the slider," okay, that is going to show a very different swing and movement pattern than if he's in the box thinking, I'm going to get a fastball over the middle of the plate and I'm going to drive it over the center fielder's head.
Right.
Versus, hey, I'm looking in and I'm going to get the barrel out and I'm going to drive this ball, for a home run.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start evaluating the mechanics, you have to know the intent that's creating the mechanics.
Definitely.
And that's why I think they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no right answer, but there is a right answer for each player.
Mm-hmm.
And that player has to understand his skill set, has to understand how hard he hits the ball. Fortunately, we have plenty of data now to show us this. And there are players who absolutely should be trying to hit home runs.
Right.
Because their exit velocities show, when they hit it good, if they can get enough loft, it's going over the fence. Right. There's nothing wrong with that.
Definitely.
But there's also a lot of players that will end their career trying to do that. And, it takes all types. So, fortunately we have plenty of data now to help players kind of figure out their buckets of, and the baseball world is great at taking a concept and really pushing it to an extreme really quick,
mm-hmm.
And right now we're living in a world of, every ground ball is bad, and if you bunt, you're a horrible human being, and that's not really true.
Yeah.
It's just where the equilibrium is falling right now. But if you just go back to the history and the fundamentals of the game, everybody's been trying to hit some form of a line drive. Some a little bit higher than others. I mean, we have D. Gordon on our team. He still wants to hit the ball in the air, but it's definitely on a different trajectory than Nelson Cruz is going to want to hit it. Just based on their skill sets. So,
yeah, that'd be my next question. As a baseball fan, what's some of the coolest experiences that you've had with the Mariners? Obviously, you've got an outstanding roster. You've got guys, one of the best left-handed hitters of all time, Robinson Cano, on your team. Talk about some of the things that you've worked with some of those guys.
Well, and again, my job is the director of player development. I don't spend a lot of time in the major leagues. I'm certainly around those guys a lot, and my job is to run our system from the Dominican Republic through Tacoma. I'll give you, let me talk about some of my Rockies experiences because I'm not there anymore, so it's a little bit easier for me to talk about guys I'm not working with on a daily basis. But there, at that time, my first game I ever went to as a Rocky employee was in AAA,
mm-hmm.
and I'll never forget this. You had Nolan Arenado playing third base. You had Charlie Culberson playing shortstop. You had DJ LeMahieu playing second base, you had, I believe, Charlie Blackmon playing center field, and then you had, a left-handed hitter from the Rays. Kid who made the All-Star team last year as a designated hitter with the Rays.
Dickerson?
Corey Dickerson was playing left.
Uh-huh.
And I inherently knew at the time, I'm like, wow, I think these guys are going to play at the next level. They're really good. But what that experience really gave me, in spending time with Nolan and Charlie and DJ, all those guys, it gave me real insight into the mind of really what's come to fruition is some of the best hitters on the planet right now. And what I walked away with almost all the time was it's no different. They're telling me the exact same thing. When Nolan's going good versus when Nolan's going bad, or when DJ's going good or when it's no different than a high school player or a youth player. It's the same mental gymnastics going on. And that's why when you brought up how early should you start early, because it doesn't change a whole lot. And, the issues of fear, the issues of swinging and missing, believe it or not, major league hitters are afraid of getting hit by the ball. And there's plenty of them up here that, it's a real issue and they overcome it on a daily basis. But I think that's the thing that's really changed for me is just the access to, Edgar Martinez is our major league hitting coach, and getting to pick his brain and hear things. And people who know me know that, I usually ask very different questions. I like to ask, Edgar, one of the things when I meet the best players, I try to figure out their 10,000 hours. And it's funny, and it's just a theory, obviously, of the 10,000 hours of practice. But
right.
It's shocking to me when I start backtracking with guys of when they really began working at the game with intent and purpose. Because, again, 10,000 hours is just not activity. It's real practice.
Mm-hmm.
That 10,000 hour rule does tend to play out more than I would think.
Mm-hmm.
And, the typical player that gets really serious about the game at 12 or 13, and, they end up kind of at their peak at 23, 24, 25 of, and you kind of backtrack, and, it's about 10,000 hours, and then we know that as they age, they get better in certain areas, but their body just begins to do what human bodies do. And so I think that's probably been, like on this year's team, Scott Brocious, is on that staff. Scott Service is on that staff. And we also have wonderful instructors that have never played a day in the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's another conversation that, do you have to have been a good player to be a good coach? And the answer is absolutely not. But if you can be a good coach and we're also a really good player, now you've really got something. Because there is no way to, one thing like I always tell people, I will never be able to tell you what it's like to stand in the batter's box and face the best pitcher in the world in a major league stadium.
Right.
I can't go back and fix that. I can't go back and change that part of it. But I can be a really good listener, and I can listen to people tell me about that.
Mm-hmm.
And you do it enough, and you keep getting the same things back to you over and over again. When I was coaching in college, and I was teaching mental skills to 18 different sports, what a quarterback explains after a very good performance is exactly what a pitcher tells you.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly what a swimmer will tell you. And when they're struggling, very similar things. So, kind of a long-winded answer to that, but those are the things that I really enjoy about being around the best players in the world.
Yeah, that's outstanding. That was you answered one of my questions, and that was, what you experienced with the Rockies, and it's clear that, the team that you coached is going to be in the playoffs and doing some damage here pretty soon.
Well, yeah, but there's a lot of people, and I do feel good. I think I probably have a very small piece of that puzzle of helping some guys at the younger ages. But the Rockies have a lot of good people involved, and most importantly, they have really good players involved. And but that's the other thing too, that when you look back at major league players, you know, and I'm not going to do it on this show, but you may want to look at Charlie Blackmon's path to where he got, and it'll blow your mind. And it was not a smooth sailing, adventure for him by any means. Look at what DJ's gone through. Most of the players, again, you can take the handful of guys, a Chris Sale, who I happen to coach in the Northwoods League in La Crosse, Wisconsin, after his freshman year of college. Been very blessed. He signed a contract, got to the big leagues fast, and has never looked back. Mm-hmm. That is so rare. Most players have some real adversity that they have to go through.
Right.
And they have to go through it multiple times. With pitchers, you're talking about injuries a lot, but even performance. Mm-hmm. Tyler Chatwood just signed a great contract with the Chicago Cubs. So now Chatty is going to be in Chicago pitching in that great ballpark on a team that's, loaded with talent and making some money. This is a guy who's had 2 Tommy Johns, had to rehab twice from that, has struggled in the big leagues at times, has had success in the big leagues at times. That's the more common story that's out there.
Yeah. So. This is a great podcast, Andy. I really appreciate it. This is my last question. Just talk about a few of the prospects that are coming up for you guys, and who you're most excited about in the minor leagues right now.
Well, we obviously haven't had this conversation because you wouldn't have asked me that question, because the answer you're going to get is probably going to bore you a little bit. But I believe all of our players are prospects. And that's what happens when you spend 20 years at a junior college coaching the kids who didn't get drafted, didn't have a scholarship, didn't do anything like that. And, I coached at a junior college that had over 40 players go to the big leagues. And so I believe, and when you go into our clubhouse right now in our major leagues, you got players that are in the major leagues that were never on any top prospect lists. So it's really important that our coaches show up every day and believe in all of our players and believe that there's a path for this player to get to the big leagues. Now, clearly, some players have wider margins, wider paths to get there.
Yeah.
And some players, hey, you're probably going to have to play well right out of the gate, and an injury would really probably take you off the rails a little bit. But there is a path for everybody, and I won't completely, dismiss your question. Kyle Lewis was our first round pick from the first year I've gotten here. He suffered a devastating knee injury, and really has not played much in 2 years. And we're very hopeful that we've got this thing squared away. And he won a Golden Spikes Award in 2016, and hopefully we're in a position now with his knee that we're heading in the right direction. And then last year's first round pick, Evan White from Kentucky, also suffered an injury right away, and so this is his first full spring training, and he is fully healthy. And we have big expectations for him, just like we do with every other player. But again, the second they become Mariners, what round they were drafted in and how much money they got really has very little impact on what happens. We believe in all of our players. We know that there's a path for all of them. We know that with the amount of information that's out there and available now, players can change their careers very quickly. And, just through, for example, weighted balls are a thing right now. And like I remind people, we were throwing weighted balls at Sacramento City College 20 years ago. And that's how baseball works. It's still considered new. Not exactly sure 20 years. We still talk about advanced analytics as being new.
Yeah.
The last time I remember, Moneyball came out a long time ago. So the definition of new can last a long time in this game.
Right.
But through a lot of these things, we've all seen pitchers take massive leaps through, a weighted ball type of program. Some people it has no effect on.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many things going out there in the game, position players with the technology of truly understanding launch angle and exit velocity, and how you can apply that immediately, and whether it's a Rapsodo unit or a HitTrax unit, things like that. You're seeing players that are taking huge leaps in their career from one year to the next. And so, I'll never put a limit on a player, and I'll just hopefully keep exposing them to different things that might click with them.
Right.
And, players can change their careers based on what they do in the weight room. We've seen that. Players can also change their careers, what they do in the training room, with increasing flexibility and mobility and opening up their hips and so forth. People can change their careers with mental skills coaches. People can overhaul their swing or their delivery and get a huge jump forward. So there's a lot of avenues that players now have, that one of them might really propel their career forward at a rate that it wasn't previously. So I think traditionally those things were not available to the players, and we didn't understand them well enough to put them in front of our players.
Definitely. Yeah, and we use a lot of technology at my facility. It's a great way to instantly adjust and to kind of get the player feedback that they normally wouldn't get from just someone saying something to them. So, yeah, the game is changing rapidly, and I love it. We're a big fan of all the the technology these days.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, thanks for your time, man. This was an outstanding interview, some amazing insight. Wish you the best of luck. The culture over in Seattle, man, I'm really impressed with what you guys are doing, and how the game is evolving in a sense that you've got mental coaches that were players. You've got yourself out there, giving these guys all the options. So, like I said, I really appreciate your time, and we'll stay in touch, man.
Yeah, anytime, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. Good luck to you.
Thanks, Andy.